Welcome everyone to the MMA Vivisection with me, Zane Simon, and my co-host Connor Rebish. We are here to talk about UFC Shanghai, which not that we don't always watch a lot of tape. We do, but this one required a little extra searching, a little extra work, a little extra.
Take advantage of the fact that we watch so many fights that we half remember quite a few of them.
This one, this card was more of a. It's weird to do a deep dive on something that is guaranteed to have so little meaning as analysis.
Yep.
That's a lot of what this card was. So, and I have to say, there's no way in hell I'm staying up for it. I will wake up and watch it immediately on Fight Pass tomorrow morning. And it'll be fun. It'll be a fun card to like that. That's the thing, though, is I was gonna say, having watched all this tape, somebody said that this card will probably sell well in China and probably not be terrible to watch, and I think that that's probably the truth. Like, it will be very low-level MMA for a lot of it, but I mean, Kailin Curran versus Alexandra Albu, like, that is a stupid fun fight to watch. It's a terrible fight, but it's fun to watch.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
And this card is going to be a lot of that, I think.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. And the only thing I'll add is that I'll probably give it like an hour or two of like having a coffee and reading a book or something before I fire up Fight Pass and watch this one. I'm not that eager to tune in.
I'm not eager too, but I actually just enjoy waking up and like watching fights and like having a cup of coffee. That's just kind of, it's a nice process. So
sounds pretty good.
Yeah. In the nature of that process, this card will be kind of fun. The top 5 fights are actually all going to be really fairly fun. So,
yeah, I agree with that.
All right. On that note, let's just jump right into the bottom. Cyril Asker versus Yadong Hu, and what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I can't steal your perfect like 5-word description of Yadong Hu's style, so I'll leave that to you.
All right.
But suffice it to say, he is sort of a swanging and banging athletic young heavyweight. And that makes for an interesting test, I suppose, against Cyril Asker, who has been winless in all but one of his, I think, 3 UFC scheduled bouts at this point. Asker is not, he is a regional heavyweight. He's certainly not the worst of the bunch of that kind. He's got some okay top position jiu-jitsu when he can get somebody down and sit on top of him for a little while. It works pretty well. He's got some decent power in his hands. And he has like who's a man, there's someone I'm thinking of here. He has like Charlie Brenneman's boxing, or like you know what I mean? Boxing that like it looks okay. Technically it's all right, but it's just not great. It's missing a special key ingredient. Maybe it's athleticism that it's missing. But Asker is like a solid heavyweight, which means that he is like at any moment just one light punch away from being knocked out, but also one fortuitous takedown away from doing some pretty good work. I'm going to take Asker over Hu simply because of his experience, which I think is going to be a line you'll hear a few times from me on this card. Simply because Hu has not fought anyone of note and has gotten away with fighting like, like he doesn't really have to care about who he's fighting. Yeah. And Asker is just good enough that if Hu has not done any special tape study for him, he may be surprised at some point. So I'm going to go with Cyril Asker.
Yeah, the line that I'm very glad, that's very kind of you not to steal, but is that Yadong Hu fights like a wrestling averse Matt Riddle. So if you just
wrestling averse Matt Riddle,
yeah, if you just took somebody with Matt Riddle's boxing game and made them a heavyweight, that's Yadong Hu. Now apparently he's got like a Greco-Roman background, but it's not one that he wants to use, certainly, because you will notice if you watch tape on him that when he's backing up, he doesn't like default to like, oh, I should wrestle now, which is the wrestler's response when they're getting backed up and like overwhelmed. He responds with, "Oh, I should wing more wild arm punches and just try to like throw myself back off the cage at the person approaching me." And yeah, I don't necessarily trust that at heavyweight against Asker, but Asker's not like, it would be no surprise at all if Yao Zhonghu just like ran at Asker and threw a bunch of punches and one of them connected and hurt him.
No. That's exactly how he wins this fight.
Yeah.
It's also exactly how he loses this fight.
Yeah. Asker's reasonable on the counter, throwing like tight hooks, reasonably tight hooks. He's got a case of the Jared Rocholtitis, the massive head that's unmissable by anyone who wants to swing at it. But Yao Zhonghu doesn't really has no command of distance whatsoever, so it's not like for all the punches he throws, oh, those are going to hit you. He will literally just be swinging at like 5 inches in front of your face, and that's fine.
He is a type of fighter who is like an experience test.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you've had enough fights to know that you can just stand a little outside the whirl of fists or just come completely inside the whirl of fists, you can probably figure out the bulk of his game.
There's a lot of fights on this card that are experience tests or minimum preparation tests. Like, did you pay attention to what your opponent does at all? Because they only do one thing, and if you avoid that, you can win.
Yeah.
But I'll take Asker, not happily. He's the smart pick, but he's never the smart pick, if that makes any sense. Yao Zhonghu is a pretty sizable underdog, opened at plus 175, adjusted up to plus 211, is now at plus 208. Not much movement on that line at all. Cyril Asker opened at minus 245, has dropped steadily down to minus 256, and is now at minus 258.
Is this well, let's give us a little hint of what's to come. In your opinion, is this yet another card in which the UFC goes to a foreign nation and then just has all of their local fighters lose? I don't think it'll be quite that extreme.
No, I don't think it will. I don't think it will be, because honestly, some of the people that they've put on this card are absolutely there to get wrecked. Like, I mean,
certainly, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. They're not exactly matching them with the cream of the crop of or UFC talent either.
There are people on this card that I'm just like, you can easily lose this fight, against random Chinese regional fighter. There's no reason not, there's no reason to doubt that some of these fighters can win. So I would not bet on all of the hometown fighters getting blown out. However, that does bring us to Luigi Buran versus Rolando D. And I mean, I expect, or Rolando Dai. I expect Dai to win this fight just because I like his game. It is a solid, functional MMA game if he ever really quite got the chance to use it. And one of the things we've seen, unfortunately for him in the UFC, is that he's not necessarily an elite featherweight for durability. Like, he's a good athlete. He's got a tight power striking game. But he also got dropped on the first shot that Teruto Ishihara hit him with, and he got eye poked by Alex Caceres, but eventually overwhelmed.
I think he got dropped a couple times by Alex Caceres too.
Yeah, like he doesn't have a great chin. He's also got kind of a big head. But
say something, Zane. Should I not go into MMA? Is that what you're trying to tell me? People with big
probably
heads?
Not. Yeah.
Damn it. My dreams.
I mean, the big head is kind of like the no neck, where it's just like a genetic thing that you're not going to be able to fix as a fighter. There are some dudes that have a head that is just a massive target, and there are some dudes who have a neck that nobody's going to choke.
I have the bad one, not the good one. Scrawny neck, giant head.
But D, his chin, like he can be hurt, but he's not easily breakable. He still takes a ton of punishment. He rallies back really well, both in his fight with Caceres and Ishihara. It seemed like he was doing all right to turn the tides in both those fights late. And Buran is just kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. He has some decent power in his hands, but he throws at a pretty slow clip. He likes to lead in a way that Dai is probably going to be able to counter pretty well, because Dai has a pretty good counter game when he can read somebody coming in after him. And Luigi's style of just sort of like slowly waiting and then throwing a couple of power strikes and then waiting and throwing a couple of power strikes should lead pretty well to getting countered. And then otherwise, Luigi depends a lot on a wrestling and clinch game that's not very advanced. And when he's not getting dropped, Dai's pretty hard to take down. So I will bet on Dai to take a decision.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me. I can see D finding a knockout
or D.
here.
I don't know.
I think it's D. I'm sticking with D because that's what I've been saying. That's usually my method. Find something, whether it's right or wrong, don't change. Never change. Luigi Buran is like, the output is really the thing that strikes me as a big problem for him in this matchup, is that, yeah, he's got some decent power. He's got pretty good triggers and timing on his counters. I think he likes to sort of stalk and not throw much and wait for you to lead. And that works pretty well when you are facing like regional level talent that is just, anytime they do lead, they do it sort of frantically and with giant swings. And so you can see that coming and time it and hit them back. D throws good, crisp, quick strikes that are difficult to see coming, difficult to time. I just don't see Buran throwing enough to force D into a lot of messy exchanges. And if you can't do that, then I think D is going to mostly pick him apart. So I'm going with Rolando D. I think he might get a TKO just because Buran is so used to a slow pace and does not have much in the way of defense. His response to being attacked is usually just to swing back. So I'm going to take D by second or third round TKO.
Yeah, that's fair. The only thing with D is that he doesn't tend to go for the kill. Like, he has one knockout, he has 3 knockouts, but only one even at all recently. And he fights at a single pace as well. He's good on the counter, but he's not the kind of guy who's like hurts somebody and then turns it up. He just lands his shots, goes back, waits for the counter opportunities.
Yeah, I just see him catching him with a really good one.
Yeah. Could happen. He's got power. He does throw with power, and he has a good educated left hand. But odds on that, Rolando D is the somewhat favorite. Open at -170, adjusted up and down to -166, not moved at all, -163. Buran opened at +130, adjusted up and down to +147, and is now out at +136. Should be noted that D, and I'll say D again. I just see my method is just to switch back and forth until somebody actually like comes after me and tells me the way it's supposed to be said. D did retire after his last bout for like 15 minutes and did come in overweight for this fight because he took it on short notice. So he doesn't have he's not Anthony Hamilton out there, but it is worth noting that he may not be at all checked in for this bout, which, I mean, Luigi Buran is not a great fighter, but he's not terrible. So
no, he's got some power. He's a pretty good athlete.
Reasonably well-rounded, can do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I can see that. If D's heart isn't really in it, and there's some evidence to suggest that might be the case, then yeah, Buran's not out of the fight here.
That takes us to a women's bantamweight bout: Yanan Wu versus Gina Mazany.
This may be one of the ones you were referencing before when you were talking about Chinese fighters not getting squashed out by the people the UFC brings in to beat them.
It absolutely could be, yes.
Gina Mazany's not that good.
No.
We can just be upfront and say that. I think a lot of people are probably going to be tempted to just pick all the UFC roster members over the new signees. This is a case in which you should absolutely resist that urge because Mazany came into the UFC with only 4 fights under her belt. They were spread out over like 6 years, and they were against fighters who basically had not ever won another fight other than fighting Gina Mazany. And she split her time doing pro wrestling while she wasn't doing that. Of course, her debut in the UFC was that short notice fight with Sarah McMahon, which very predictably McMahon won with ease. The big question for her in this fight, because Mazany is ostensibly a submission grappler, although I would not say a particularly good one. The real question for her here is, can she get Yanan Wu to the ground?
Yep.
Because she needs to hit takedowns on Wu in order to have any chance against her. Because McMahon at least had the option. She could probably outstrike Mazany, or she could take her down and submit her, which is what she did. Wu has to probably beat her with the striking. Not that she's completely lost for ideas on the ground, but that's not where she prefers to be. And Mazany is really, really wonky on the feet. So Wu's takedown defense in her fight with which was that? Yana Kunitskaya was not great. But Gina Mazany is also not a phenomenal wrestler. And Wu likes to keep just sort of a steady, methodical pace, lots of pressure, but without overextending, without throwing too crazily. Just basically relies on a super stiff jab. I think that's the kind of style that's going to force Mazany to shoot messy when she does shoot. And either way, if she cannot get Wu on her back for an extended period of time, she's going to get beaten up here. So I'm going with Yanan Wu. I think she'll get a second round TKO.
Yeah, this really is just a case of, does Mazany get takedowns? If she doesn't, then she loses.
Yeah.
Because Wu is big, too. That's the other thing. Yanan Wu is 5'9".
She's also got one of those big heads.
So she might be
headed for a dark future in that realm as well. But she's also filling out as she continues to fight. Like, she's getting more and more solid over time.
Yeah, it's women's bantamweight. Let's not pretend it's full of knockout artists.
That's true. Especially not in this fight is it going to be a problem.
Yeah, but Mazany's her striking's a mess, and she has not fought nearly enough to make me think that it's something that is getting quickly fixed. It's not the kind of thing where it's like, oh yeah, we see her fight every few months over a number of years, and there's a clear progression there. It seems like somebody who practically quit the sport potentially before coming back and taking a fight in Alaska and getting signed to the UFC for a short notice fill-in and then getting blown out of the water. And from there, is she going to be improving rapidly? Who knows? I am going to take Mazany just because I think she will run out of the gate and look for takedowns immediately and not try to strike for even a second.
This is one of those, how much did you prepare for your opponent fights?
Exactly. If Yanan Wu just knows that Mazany's going to run out of the gate and try and take her down and has prepared at all to stuff that initial onslaught, she could easily win this. If she hasn't,
Mazany insanely does not press for takedowns early.
Yeah, if Mazany does not run out there and Mazany thinks, I'm going to test my hands in this fight, then she'll get lit up. Because almost all the Chinese fighters the UFC's picked up, with only one real exclusion, are very comfortable, competent strikers. They may not be the most diverse, technically deep strikers out there, but they are all very clearly have kickboxed a lot, have done other combat sports that require a lot of striking a lot, and have a good command of range and a good command of their basic form and function on punches. So much more so than somebody like Mazany, who just seems like she's doing other stuff. Is out there to wrestle and grapple and treats striking as like a thing to get her to wrestling.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna take Mazany, but not happy. I think she'll just run out and get a takedown and then find a submission. But if she doesn't, if Yanan Wu can fight her off at all, if Yanan Wu can stuff the stuff takedowns, then she'll win. Mazany is a very slight favorite. She opened at minus 245, which is nonsense. Moved up to minus 136 or so, and then just recently has jumped up to minus 128. And Yanan Wu opened at plus 175, adjusted down to plus 118, and is just recently dropped to plus 105. And I think that's fine. As close to dead even odds as possible, because especially Yanan Wu beat.
Wish I could have get on in those wide odds though, because
yeah,
as a minus 250 favorite over almost anyone in the UFC it's just a little too much.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, Yanan Wu being as big as she is, Mazany's not a great technical wrestler. And if you're not a great technical wrestler, fighting people that are bigger than you is terrible, because usually how you get takedowns is power and slams and, like, just out bullying someone to the mat. So Yanan Wu being big, if she can sprawl her out once or twice, that could just shut the whole wrestling game down immediately.
That's kind of what I'm expecting.
Yeah, it could easily happen. That brings us to a heavyweight bout. Sherman versus Shamil Abdurakhimov.
Well, this is an interesting one, I guess, because of the pace difference. Because technically, I would happily take Shamil Abdurakhimov over Sherman.
Yep.
Even though Sherman is clearly making efforts to improve his technical striking game in particular, he's still kind of wooden.
Yep.
Still extremely hittable. Definitely has one of those big heads that is just an inviting target and has not yet learned how to move it.
Yeah, it was funny watching his fight with Grabowski, and like the commentary team was just so sold. Like, because Sherman's a nice guy. He's out there on social media. He is a person of the internet, one of our people. But the commentary team, like, they made that like the reason that he was like obviously a much better fighter. They're like, oh, look at the way he's moving, and he's sliding out of range, and he looks just so much more natural out there. And then he like eats some wild winging overhand from Damian Grabowski, like right on the chin, and like, well, he didn't dodge that one, but he just looks world. Like,
I mean, I think you can look at that fight and say, look, Sherman has improved.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's fair. I think you could also look at that fight and say, look, anytime Grabowski throws a right hand, Sherman eats it. And both of those are true.
Yeah.
So we're really waiting. If we do have high hopes for Sherman as a fighter, then we are waiting for him to sort out some of those issues. And Shamil Abdurakhimov is an interesting challenge for somebody who doesn't move their head and who wants to do a long range striking kickboxing style, but it's just wide open to be countered and hit at almost every opportunity. Abdurakhimov is a pretty good technical striker, but he does not push the same kind of pace as Sherman.
No.
Who can fight at a really good clip for 3 solid rounds without visibly slowing down, which is pretty rare in and of itself at heavyweight. I'm gonna take Abdurakhimov because I think he's probably just the slight ceiling of where Sherman's striking technique can take him, with the big caveat that if Sherman has improved as much from his last fight to this one as he did between the fight before that to that one, then I think he can probably win this one. He is coming along, I think, at a pretty impressive pace and just needs to not be a sitting duck for every single right hand that's thrown at him to win this fight. But I think that Abdurakhimov is going to land the more telling blows, even in a round in which Sherman is maybe outlanding him or certainly outthrowing him.
Yeah, I'm going to take Sherman just because I think he's going to outland Abdurakhimov 2-1.
What are their numbers? While you do your breakdown, I'm going to look up their numbers.
Yeah, and that's really just it. Like, that is the only reason. And a big part of the biggest part of why I'm doing that too is that because of his pace that he fights at, Abdurakhimov hasn't knocked anyone out since 2011.
Yeah.
So if this is, and Sherman has a really good chin. I mean, that's the reason that Sherman can get away with being as wooden and hittable as he is.
Yeah, I'm gonna flop. I'm gonna flop to your pick. I'm gonna go with Chase Sherman because just looking at these numbers, I'll emphasize your point with the the fight metric numbers here. Chase Sherman lands 42% of his strikes, lands on average 6.33 of them per minute, which means he throws, like 13 to 14 strikes per minute. Shamil Abdurakhimov, landing at a 45% clip, lands 2.48 strikes per minute, which means he's throwing like 4 or 5 strikes per minute.
Yep.
Which is quite a profound difference.
Yeah, it's a big difference. And if
also, I mean, I don't know, because if Damian Grabowski is like almost wobbling you with
I know.
I'm gonna stick to my guns. I'm sticking with Shamil Abdurakhimov. No flopping for me today.
Okay. I couldn't talk you out of it. The other part of this though for me is like this is another one of those fights where I'm like, how much do you prepare really, Shamil Abdurakhimov? How much do you watch tape? Because if you watch tape at all, the avenue to win this fight is pretty clear. Because one of the other things about Chase Sherman is he has still not faced anyone who even tries to wrestle him. Mm-hmm. Like Grabowski was the first guy who could have tried and didn't. He just was happy to have a boxing match with Chase Sherman.
Yeah.
And nobody else Chase Sherman has faced in his entire career has been at all interested in wrestling him. The unfortunate thing for Abdurakhimov is that he's as reasonable, okay, not great, but reasonable a wrestler as he is, he's very happy to just have a slow-paced boxing match.
Yeah.
Most of his takedowns come because he catches something, like he catches a kick and he'll tip somebody down and then he'll get a little wild and let them up or something like that. And he's just not any kind of consistent wrestler to make me pick him.
No, but and consistency is definitely the reason to pick Chase Sherman.
Yep. Odds here, Abdurakhimov is the slight favorite, opened at -120, adjusted down to about -140, is currently right there. Line has not moved at all. Chase Sherman opened at -120, so opened pretty even, and just up to +120 and is down to +114 now. So I get why the lines are close. I get why people might be favoring Abdurakhimov because Chase Sherman really does just get hit with everything. But he's got a good chin, and if it's just going to be a volume match of two guys who don't actually hurt each other and stand and trade for 3 rounds, I'm going to pick Sherman.
Mm-hmm. And it's possible, too, Abdurakhimov is maybe not the most durable heavyweight in the world.
No.
That Chase Sherman with that volume could hurt him.
Yep.
Just by throwing enough.
Yep. Sherman's not a great power puncher. Doesn't sit down on anything, really. But he could throw. He could just through putting, 250 strikes out as a heavyweight, catch him with something.
For sure.
Brings us to a bantamweight bout: Yadong Song versus Bharat Khandare. Khandare being, if you were a Super Fight League fan like me, he was the star of Super Fight League. He was the dude who people would look at and be like, maybe he could actually fight in the real world outside of this mythical, tiny, isolated, weird ass world of Indian MMA.
This guy looks like an MMA fighter, not a Super Fight League fighter.
Yeah. That said, I'm going to pick Yadong Song here because looking like an MMA fighter, I don't know if people have seen Bharat Khandare's one non-Super Fight League fight that he had outside of getting set up with the like lowest level untrained cans that he could possibly face, but that dude just lit him up. Just wrecked his shit and knocked him out. And the big reason was that it showed, and why I'm picking him here over Yadong, or picking Yadong Song over him, is that Khandare gets no drive on his takedowns. Like, he has what looks like a decent wrestling shot, and then he meets the hips of his opponent, and if they put any resistance into it at all, he just falters. He slides straight up their body, resets, and goes back to range, where his striking is ridiculously clunky. Song is a bit of a right-hand machine. A lot of the Chinese fighters on here are just like very much, I'm setting up just to throw my right hand, and like here's a jab that you can think about, and maybe a body kick or lead leg body kick, but it's really all about the right hand.
Just about eating up time between right hand attempts.
Yeah. Yadong Song is a bit of that guy. He can be hurt, but it takes quite a bit to hurt Yadong Song. Like, his one knockout loss, I believe, he only has the one, came to Alexei Polpudnikov, who is 23-4 now and has not lost in 3 years and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 fights, all of them coming by, all those wins, except one coming by stoppage. And, like, that being your only KO and that being in the second round, like a reasonable, like he took a lot of shots, he gave back a lot of shots. It was a pretty difficult fight. I have reasonable faith in Yadong Song's chin. It's not terrible. And he's otherwise just not a terrible fighter. Like if you watch his Scrivers fight where somebody trying to take him down, he fought off takedowns okay, well enough for what Khandare does wrestling, and reversed positions well enough on the mat. He's got a reasonably good command of his timing and his striking on the feet. These aren't bad fighters coming out of China. They're not the technically deepest fighters, but they've had experience. They've taken fights. They have a good martial arts background they're working off of, and it seems like Yadong Song.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree. I think a lot of people here are going to be going for Bharat Khandare because of the wrestling, and we still have this sort of baseline assumption that if you can wrestle and your opponent doesn't really want to, then we're just going to assume the wrestler has the edge. But more and more these days, even when you're facing regional Chinese fighters, it really depends on how solid the game is surrounding that wrestling. And yeah, you're right. Like Khandare's wrestling in itself is not flawless. It's he's creative. He looks like someone who's wrestled a lot.
He comes from a like traditional Indian like folk style of wrestling, not even like a international style or anything.
Yeah, I mean those can sometimes be very, very strong if the scene is thriving. Like American folk style, I guess, has a lot more in common with international wrestling styles, but also like traditional wrestling in Iran prepares Iranian wrestlers to become very good wrestlers. And
but I mean, India doesn't have like any of that international acclaim as wrestling. It's one of those places that people are like, oh, they have a long history of wrestling. And it's like, yeah, okay, when's the last like great Olympic Indian wrestler?
There's not been a long track record of their wrestling style succeeding against the world. And you can definitely see like Khandare looks like someone who wrestles a lot. His chain wrestling is a lot better than his shot for that reason, because when somebody gives him a little resistance, he has enough experience to know, all right, I'm going to take him this direction, how to just flow off of that first objection to his takedown attempt. But a wrestler without a strong shot is not a great sign. And especially when, as I think you said, I don't remember which fighter earlier you said this about, but the striking is really just something. Oh, Gina Mazany. The striking takes up time between takedowns. It's just something you do to set up takedowns. It's not really an end to itself. And I don't know. That sounds like if we're looking for one of these fighters to be kind of desperate and flailing in the other's wheelhouse, I think Song is going to have a much happier time striking with Khandare than Khandare is going to have wrestling with Song.
Yeah, and Song's got like pretty legit power, and he's got great timing on that power. He really leads people into his right hand.
Yeah. Like you said, he's not a phenomenal fighter, but neither is Khandare, and I think the style matchup favors Song. So I'm going to take Yadong Song by, I think I'll take a TKO.
Yeah, I'll take TKO. The way Khandare looked in that loss of his, he looked like a guy lost with people who won't just fold up. And The only knockout win on his Tapology record is a moat fight knockout. And if you watch the tape on that, it is like they call it custom rules bout, and it's him fighting at some traditional martial artist who has clearly never fought full contact before in his life. And the dude's just like, "What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?" And Khandare just front kicked him in the face, and the dude just dropped and folded up immediately. So
I like reminders of how dangerous even like the least impressive mixed martial artists are to the average human being.
Yeah. Strip mall black belts, even in China. Or Japan. I think that guy was a Japanese dude. Yadong Song is a slight favorite here. Opened at -150, adjusted up to -130, has fallen steadily back down to -145. And Bharat Khandare opened at +110, has risen slowly and steadily to +120. I like the direction those are going. Khandare's Super Fight League experience is frankly pretty worthless, so all he really has in terms of reasonable international competition is his one loss where he just looked lost and got beat up. He has been training at Jackson Wink lately because the UFC is doing this whole fighter let's raise up and make these fighters better and bring them to major US camps. But I guess Yadong Song is coming in on short notice because they say they might do that with Song as well because they're doing it a lot with their Chinese prospects they're getting. But this is a short notice fight for him. Still, I don't think a year at Jackson. I don't think even if it's been a year or a few months. Actually, yeah, it'd be a few months at Jackson Wink is gonna solve his problems.
No, we're beyond 6 months of sprawl training territory.
Yeah. Brings us to a women's strawweight bout. Kailin, Curran, Xiaonan. And is this
me, right?
You or me? Let's see. Me. This is me. Yeah. Because you, Cyril Asker, you, Yanan Wu, you, Yadong Song Bharat Khandare. Or, yeah, so this is me. I can't pick Kailin Curran to win this fight. And I don't really see how you pick Kailin Curran to win this fight. Alexandra Albu was a power striker with no functional MMA game to speak of. Albu was lighting Curran up from range and then pulled guard on Curran to get herself taken down.
Yep.
And did that repeatedly all fight. That is the way that Kailin Curran got takedowns in that fight, was Alexandra Albu pulling guard.
Yeah.
And those takedowns are 95% of the reason that Curran had any credit to potentially winning that fight, and she still didn't. Yan Xiaonan is a pretty scrappy, hard-hitting fighter. Just a solid, stay-in-your-face, power-striking style that's, once again, reasonably educated, reasonably, good command of distance, good at leading people into her strikes, good at timing things and throwing with timing. And then she's an inch taller than Kailin Curran and, 4 inches taller than Alexandra Albu.
Yeah.
And Kailin Curran's biggest problem in her career is that she, kind of like Alex Chambers, just does not have the physicality to bully anyone. And she fights with a ton of physicality. She's so wooden and hittable from range that she really is forced to be a clinch fighter, and then she's not strong enough in the clinch to actually turn any fight there. So, maybe she can get takedowns on Yan Xiaonan and beat her up from top position, but she's never really shown the physicality to consistently get takedowns in her career. And at range, even against another incredibly limited fighter in Alexandra Albu, she just ate power shots all fight. So I got to pick Yan Xiaonan here.
Yeah, the reason not to pick Yan Xiaonan is the record that I'm about to read to you, which is, here's her opponent's records: 0-1-0, 0-0-0, 0-1-0, 0-0-0, 0-0-0, 18-10-0, and that's it.
Oh, she's a can crusher. There's
Yeah.
well, but yeah, so
But
you know, there's no doubt about that.
Go on.
But like the Emi Fujino fight, like, you know, Fujino came out and tried for takedowns. Fujino's record isn't great in the way that any Japanese, you know, fighter's record is not going to be great. But Fujino has also only lost twice in the past 3 years to Mizuki Inoue and somebody named Weili Zhang. But, you know, she didn't have any success taking Yan Xiaonan down.
Right. So like the conversation we're having here is really like, how much does inexperience matter when balanced against all the other pieces that make an MMA game work? Like, how much faith do we have in Kailin Curran simply because she has fought UFC opponents quite a few times? And honestly, at this point, next to none.
Yeah, I mean, Alexandra Albu was 2-0 when she beat Kailin Curran.
Yeah, frankly, like, Kailin Curran is just not that good at this.
No.
And I don't mean to be cruel. Like, she's just doesn't seem to have like the coordination or the physical ability to be a very good fighter, and nor does she seem to have really the mentality for it, because in fights where it seems like, okay, she can win this round on volume, she doesn't throw much. In fights where she only needs a takedown, it's her opponent who gives her the takedown. It's just like she just is sort of aimless and not very physically imposing. And against Xiaonan Yan, who is both very purposeful and quite physically imposing, I think that's enough. I think, though there's not enough experience to back her, I think Xiaonan Yan is probably going to be able to have her way with Curran on the feet with striking. The only question here is, you know, does she have a hard time because she finishes most of her fights relatively early? But again, Kailin Curran she's never really come through when I'm like, all right, well, your experience is going to carry you here. It doesn't. It just doesn't. She's just not really cut out for this.
And
so,
with fighters like Curran, and it's worth remembering too, for fighters like Curran and Asker and Nash up and down this card, they're traveling to China. Like, if you're the foreign fighter flying in, that means that you're the person who's had to like plan your weight cut for a plane travel. You may have only gotten there a few days out, and a lot of times, like, especially for fighters like Curran who aren't, you know, don't have a ton of money to like do a lot of advanced prep and stuff like that, that just can kill a lot of fighters. I mean, it's notable too, like, just in general, how many fighters have tended to fight worse going to Japan, because the jet lag traveling west is harder to deal with. So
that's a fair point. Yeah, like, if I am giving you an edge in experience, maybe all that accounts for is you kind of know how to schedule your weight cut, you know. But like in the cage, I don't know how much it's going to show up because there's so much shit to deal with beyond it.
Yeah, it's so I got to pick Xiaonan here. If Curran wins, great honor, and you know, it'll probably be an experience and toughness thing and ability to battle through adversity. But we're at the point now where it's just clearly not going to be a technical thing. Curran is the slight underdog. Opened at -110, adjusted up to +113, now to +123. Xiaonan Yan opened at -130, adjusted up and down, back to -130, and has dropped steadily to -149. I wouldn't say it should get too long there, but I like her as the favorite. I think
Mm-hmm.
At this point, with the way Curran's been fighting lately, she kind of has to be.
Yeah, I agree.
That brings us to a welterweight bout. Kenan Song versus Bobby Nash. And this is you.
Yeah. This is a weird one because we've got two guys who I don't feel like I should particularly have to care that much about, both of whom are coming in off of 2 straight losses. And so it is kind of weird that, I don't know, this is the guy they're signing and this is the dude they're bringing in to fight him. Kenan Song is not, is it Song Kenan or Kenan Song?
I don't know. It's actually it's Song Kenan.
Okay, Song Kenan. I try to do it correctly with Korean names and I always screw that up too.
Okay. The easiest way I can tell is that the part that has 2 syllables is often like 2 names joined together.
Like Korean.
Like Korean. And so the part with 1 syllable is the given name, and the 2-part one is the family name.
Or is it that the family name just comes first? And
the family name does come first, but you read the given name first. Or like, you know.
I never know. Okay. Well, anyway. We'll figure this out when we're off camera.
Yeah. It depends if you want to anglify it. So his first name, his given name is Song, and his family name is Kenan.
We'll say Song Kenan versus Bobby Nash. Song Kenan, I think I would give him a better chance against Bobby Nash if he could push a pace with his wrestling, but he doesn't really. He looks really imposing. He can fling people around in the clinch for a bit, but it doesn't ever really seem to come together into a cohesive fight plan. And that just becomes like, you can't ignore how true that is when you look at the fact that he's been given 2, I don't want to say gimme opponents in his last 2 fights, but ones that you would think his level of experience would prepare him for. And in both of them, he kind of loses unimpressively. The fight with Brad Riddle in particular, like, I would think that Song Kenan would be in there trying to tie up Riddle and wrestle him constantly and force him to fight off chain takedown attempts. And instead he spends like about 60% of the fight sort of circling at range, not getting much done. Bobby Nash can win that kind of fight. He's a capable wrestler, so I think he can thwart most of what Song throws at him on that front. And he is definitely a heavy-handed puncher with good hand speed, good accuracy and timing. He's had a rough go of it in the UFC, but he has had a rough go of it against a better level of competition than Song Kenan has. So I'm taking Bobby Nash by TKO.
Yeah, Bobby Nash has had the unfortunate reality shown to him that spending your entire life not being a boxer and then trying to make a pro fighting career out of becoming a box-first fighter may not be the best thing to get you to an elite level. However,
when like the first 2 guys you fight are Danny Brown and Li Jingliang, like 2 guys with very good hands.
Danny Roberts, yeah.
Danny Roberts, sorry.
Yeah. No, they're 2 guys who are much better strikers than you, and you know, this is one of the few where it's just like the hometown guy is just going to get obliterated.
Yeah.
Very likely.
Classic foreign UFC card fight.
Yeah. Because Kenan doesn't seem like actually a very good wrestler. He's really kind of foot slow and trudging and not a highly athletic sort of, you know, blow you out of the water with a big power slam or a really masterful technical, like, oh, I'm in on this single leg and then I'm going to transfer to the double and then I'm going to go low and then I'm going to come back up into a waist lock and pull you down kind of wrestler. None of that. He just trudges forward and kind of hopes that his imposing physicalness pushes you to the mat. And Nash can handle that. Hits way harder. He's got a good length on his punches and a lot of faith in his power. More to a fault, you know, for him, tragically, but this is not the kind of fight that I expect to be a problem for that at all. Watching Kenan Song get tagged up by another power wrestler dude who's happy to box is just like, yeah, okay, this is. So I got to pick Bobby Nash pretty easily too.
He was kind of just Bobby Nash, but like with even fewer fights. So,
yeah,
I mean, that kind of makes it an easy Bobby Nash pick for me.
Nash is a pretty sizable favorite here. Opened at minus 280, adjusted down to minus 290, now up to minus 307. And Song Kenan, where is the thing? There it is. Opened at plus 200, adjusted up to plus 247, now at plus 245. So not much movement on that line after initial adjustments. And that brings us to a featherweight bout, the fight on the card, for being real here. You're muted, but
yes.
Zabit Magomedsharipov versus Sheymon Moraes. And this is me, right? I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is going to be a cool fight, and I would be lying if I said I was really sure of how it was going to go. Magomedsharipov had the good luck in term just to debut before Sheymon Moraes, which means that his performance and ability is much more embedded in the minds of fans. You know, he's just built a huge amount of hype with his debut win over Mike Santiago.
He did all he could to make that a hype-building win, too. He tried his flashiest shit in that fight.
Yep. But Sheymon Moraes is 100% unquestionably legit as a talent.
Oh, yeah.
You know? His only loss is a submission loss to Marlon Moraes in a WSOF title fight. He's got a good, solid record over strong competition on his way up. And it's been a sort of, you know, he's fought in like these bursts of activity where he fought a bunch in 2012, a few times in 2014, and then since then it's just kind of been on that slow World Series of Fighting schedule. But he's only, what, 27 now.
Which does mean, to be clear, like, not getting as many fights as he wanted to get.
Yeah. World Series of Fighting schedule means they signed you to a deal where they're like, oh, you'll fight 5 times a year, no problem, and you'll make $100,000 a fight. And then that actually means that they just keep saying, oh, we don't have a fight for you this card, and you fight once a year.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is this is a hyper style clash striking matchup because Moraes is the more powerful striker, the more powerful athlete, undoubtedly. I think one of the things that's gotten a bit overlooked with how flashy and cool Magomedsharipov is that he is not the most powerful athlete out there. He is really fast. He is accurate. He's coordinated as all fucking hell. Way too coordinated for a dude that looks like, you know, Shaggy. But he's not the strongest dude in the world. And that was something I was really worried about in his fight with Mike Santiago, was that he would get bullied. And he showed, honestly, like, that he's completely legit by just fighting through being bullied by Mike Santiago, because Santiago had the right game plan. He came out, he pressured Sharipov, he tried to like trap him against the fence, he tried to throw body kicks and wade in on him and keep the pressure on him. And when he did that, he had some success. Like, he was able to push Sharipov around just a little, but only a little.
Yeah.
And Moraes is a much more technical striker than Santiago, a much less wild one. But yeah, I mean,
depends.
Depends. Okay, how about this?
Pretty wild.
He can get wild, but he's a more deliberate one.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But the thing is that he's not really a boxer. Like, his hands serve two distinct purposes. If he's out at range, he wants to throw his punches to lure you into kicks. He'll like throw a wide lead left hand or a right hook or a jab or something like that to get you stepping back into a kick. Very Crow Cop sort of style of boxing in that way, although Crow Cop usually kept his punches pretty short and tight. But just, you know, the idea of the Krokop's boxing game was always all about pushing you into his kicking game. Mm-hmm. Or the other part of Moraes' boxing game is that he moves, if you push forward on him, he just throws wild hooks and just tries to flurry to get you back away from him, which is the less structured, the more wild part of his striking game.
Although there are usually some very pretty elbows mixed into those wild hook flurries.
Yeah, he'll step in with some really pretty nasty elbows. He throws with his hands with power, so it's not like they aren't dangerous punches. It's just that a lot of what he's looking for out of them is to lure you into his kicking game.
Yeah,
which he throws with a ton of power to all targets all the time. And one of the things about Magomedsharipov's striking game and the way that he just his build, even this tall, skinny. He's not short-armed, but he seems short-armed just because he's so thin-shouldered.
He's got such a long torso. He has that Max Holloway build.
He's got that Max Holloway build. He holds his arms real high a lot. And he is very open to eating power shots to the body. Like, that is something that is one of the few things that Santiago landed regularly on him in their fight.
I remember, and he actually got him to tuck his elbow and back off for a few seconds with some liver kicks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that makes this an interesting fight because so much of what Moraes does is about trying to set up power kicks and especially, some head kicks, but a lot of body kicks. Just trying to lure you into his power kicking game. And he's the better, more powerful athlete in that way here. Like, he's going to land the harder shots. It's just, can he deal with Magomedsharpov's creativity and accuracy? Because he's the wilder boxer. Magomedsharipov is a much tighter, cleaner boxer in tight, better at cutting angles, ducking, landing little counter shots right on the chin as you try to close him down. And then the more creative kicker at range where he can throw stuff that having a step forward, walk into stuff, and look for power to set up power shots game like Moraes does means you're walking into a unpredictable style. I'm going to lean Magomedsharipov because of his unpredictability, because we've seen his toughness. We've seen him weather pressure before and be able to fight through, good athletes taking him to the body, taking the right approaches to him. I have faith that Magomedsharipov can do that. But Moraes is a really live dog here. Like, he hits really crushingly hard, and he can set up the kind of strikes that Magomedsharipov is open to, is prone to taking. So I'm taking Magomedsharipov, but I'm doing it with reservations that I wouldn't be that shocked if he eats like a huge liver kick and gets doubled over.
Yeah, no, that's you got me all excited for this fight all over again. And as you said at the top of your breakdown, this is the fight on the card.
Yeah,
like, this is the reason to watch this card. If you're interested in fights between like high level athletes with supreme skill in matchups that really matter for their divisions, this is a meaningful featherweight fight between two fighters that are both extremely fun to watch. Magomedsharipov, I caught you a couple times doing what I catch myself doing, which is I say Sharipov as if it's his last name because his last name is so long. Sounds like two full names. Magomedsharipov is certainly the more technical striker. The real thing that stands out to me here is that Moraes just does not have the same level of depth to his striking.
Yeah.
He is like...
Especially not to his boxing game. That's really what it is. Like, he's a very, very good kicker. But with his hands, it's really just, here's a single long strike to get you moving back into the kick the way I want you moving into my kick.
And even with his kicks, everything is power.
Yeah.
Moraes throws heat. And that I think may end up being his downfall in this fight. because while that left body kick, which I hadn't thought of before, that's a serious weapon for him against just somebody who's shaped the way Zabit Magomedsharipov is shaped.
Yeah.
But even with that, the strikes are going to be relatively easy for a fighter like Magomedsharipov to see coming.
Mm-hmm.
And Sheymon Moraes has made a lot of hay on the regional scene in World Series of Fighting against opponents who, like, they just see how he looks and how much he's putting into every shot, and you have to react. So they sort of have an almost panicked reaction, and that's what allows him to set up his kicks with those hands. Magomedsharipov is not going to be thinking, oh shoot, here comes a big wide hook, I better step back into kicking range just in case. He's probably going to be more the type of fighter who, if it's not going to land, he'll just let it miss. If it's just going to land, he might step inside of it and catch him with a counter, tie him up in the clinch, maybe even hit him with a takedown. And that's something that I'm considering too, is that Magomedsharipov did not just show off his striking in that UFC debut, he showed off his grappling. And the thing that stood out to me since he first got signed in the UFC was how deadly his ground and pound is.
Yep.
He is pretty scary on top of people. He's got those long arms, and so he gets this full posture with all 19 feet of his torso, lofty height above his opponent on their back, and just rains down straight shots the way Anderson Silva used to do, the way I've always liked Matt Brown doing.
Yep.
It is the scariest kind of ground and pound, and it's the kind that if you get hurt by Magomedsharipov, you're probably going to get finished.
Yeah.
Because he follows up with accuracy and precision and just laser guided missiles, sending them straight into your head when it's flat against the canvas. I think Sheymon Moraes is going to be a stiff test here, but I do see Moraes as more of a test for Magomedsharipov than I see the other way around.
Yeah, I'll be fascinated to see what happens, because Magomedsharipov he is very willing against guys who are like powerful fighters at pressure to back himself into the cage.
Oh yeah.
And then fight off the cage. So I'm going to be really fascinated to see what happens early in this fight when Moraes takes the center and comes forward and tries to set up his kicking game, because
but that
it'll be
was
really
my favorite moment of that Mike Santiago fight, when Magomedsharipov backed up to the cage, waited for Santiago to throw, knew he was going to throw the right hand, slipped, hit him with a little uppercut, and then pivoted out to the outside. Like, I love seeing that kind of stuff in MMA. And like Sheymon Moraes is a scary fighter and a very talented one, but I don't think his game has really been progressing. And it hasn't been helped by the fact that he just hasn't been getting that many fights recently, not nearly as many as he should. So between two young fighters, one of whom has been much busier and has spent that time sharpening his skills, I'm going to go with the sharper fighter.
Yep. Magomedsharipov opened at -405 and adjusted down to -478, is now -530. Moraes opened at +285, adjusted up to +374, and is now at +395. Now, I'm picking Magomedsharipov, but that is literally you debuted in the UFC first and put on a complete, like, awesome looking highlight reel performance odds. Those are not indicative of this fight.
That's absolutely true. Like, people have forgotten about Sheymon Moraes, and it's the World Series of Fighting's own fault that when Marlon Moraes and Sheymon Moraes fought, it was not billed more heavily as like, this is an exciting fight between two very talented young fighters. Sheymon Moraes he's just been swept under the rug a little bit, but like a year or two ago, he was a lot of people's top prospect in this division. So he's still one to watch, and he's still only 27.
Yeah. All right, that brings us to the first fight on the main card: Muslim Salikhov versus Alex Garcia.
I guess I'm supposed to be really, really excited for Muslim Salikhov because all of his highlights are just him spin kicking people into the ether. But I have some questions, right? Always boring with the questions. Look at Muslim Salikhov's record. This man has not fought outside the first round since his fourth professional fight in 2013. Now, it's not that long ago, but that's also like the only one of his entire career that's been outside the first round. And I don't have a ton of faith in somebody whose game is like flashy spin kicks and big counters outside of their comfort zone. I can see that kind of thing falling apart really quickly. But he's fighting Alex Garcia, who also has many of his own unique ways of falling apart in fights. The obvious thing to look for here is Garcia's wrestling. Garcia, I think, actually holds maybe a divisional record for takedowns attempted. He shoots a lot, and is not like a huge controlling artist on the ground, and mostly I think because he tends to gas. But he does pursue wrestling and jiu-jitsu primarily in a lot of his fights. And I imagine he's going to be trying to do that here against Muslim Khalidov. That's why this one's so perplexing to me, though, because Garcia, like a few of the other fighters we've talked about here, doesn't seem to know how to not throw with power. Or perhaps in Garcia's case, it's more that he's more of an Abel Trujillo type, where he gets tagged or gets frustrated and then starts winging with wild power shots. He can come out and look more composed and more refined than his last fight, but when things start to get messy, Garcia is usually the one who gets messiest.
Mm-hmm.
That works against him because he is a massive muscle-bound, he's a ball of muscle, and he tends to exhaust himself fighting that way. And Muslim Khalidov is probably
Salikhov.
Oh, sorry, Salikhov. And this is me just mixing up all of my different non-American names. Muslim Salikhov is probably gonna cause Garcia to lose his cool a bit with his like flashy, scary, psyching you out until you can duck into a spinning kick style. So I think I'm still gonna stick with Salikhov in this fight. But obviously, like, there are too many unknowns here for me to feel very confident about either one. Like, how does Alex Garcia react to Salikhov is as big a question as how does Salikhov react to a second round with Alex Garcia?
There's a lot of what the fuck does a 2017 win over Melvin Guillard actually mean?
Right. Yeah. There's plenty of that.
I mean, his best win of his career is Batman, Ivan George. And, like, I like Ivan George, but he's not he's 37 and he's never, he's been a mediocre power striker who mostly does jiu-jitsu and doesn't wrestle well enough to make either of those games work at a UFC level.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. And I guess you could say this is good matchmaking because they have matched, but that's why it's so perplexing because Garcia, like Salikhov, has a lot of those questions where even in this fight with Mike Pyle, who was in some universe or another always going to be knocked out by Alex Garcia, he was already starting to fall apart at the point at which he knocked Mike Pyle out. You could see his technique was getting kind of sloppy. He was breathing kind of hard, and he hit him with like almost a Hail Mary wild left hand to put him away. But it was already reaching the point where I was like, oh, this is where Mike Pyle starts to win this fight. And if Salikhov at that point without just being ground out and out wrestled completely, then he's got a shot because Garcia.
The other side of this is how much do 2016 wins over Mike Pyle, 2015 wins over Mike Swick, and is Sean Spencer the best win, a split decision over Sean Spencer, the best win of Alex Garcia's career?
Pretty much a hotly disputed split decision win over Sean Spencer.
Yeah. Like
how much better is his record than Salikhov's, really?
Yeah. And the thing really that gets me and has me picking Salikhov here is that Garcia doesn't ever like to not produce offense.
Mm-hmm.
Whether he's the one who is, whether he's coming out to wrestle or coming out to strike, he's always going to be leading and pressuring. And his striking game isn't that highly structured. Like even I think in his last fight against Tim Means, Dominic Cruz was like, Alex Garcia throws a shit ton of left hooks. Like he's going to come out and throw a lot of left hooks. And there's, Alex Garcia out there looking for his left hook. And so if you're coming forward has a predictable, he's fast, he's got fast hands, he's got power, but as a predictable striker who's going to like throw a few strikes that are not that like, but not that many in a different variety, and you're walking into a dude that is just like, you know, a razor blade tornado, that just does not feel like smart game planning. Like, you know, this is one of those fights where it's like, how much do you really prepare, Alex Garcia?
Yeah.
Because if you prepare a lot, you might be able to take, you know, fight around Salikhov and wait for him to extend himself on something funky and then get in on a takedown and work from there. Salikhov's not a terrible wrestler that I've seen. You know, he's fighting, he's working out of American Top Team at least part-time these days. But his level of competition is also pretty low, so it's hard to really tell on that. But against bad competition, he is a good offensive wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
So I gotta take him over Garcia here. It's just Garcia's style of offense just, it means it's either going to be his speed and power that Muslim Salikhov's not going to be prepared for and get caught by early, not be prepared for somebody who leads as fast as Garcia does, or he's just gonna counter him and knock him out. And I gotta think that it's the counter.
Yeah, one of Salikhov's most memorable finishes of the ones I've seen was not even the spin kick galore. It wasn't even a spin kick finish at all. There was a fight, I can't remember which one. He just caught a guy coming in with a lightning fast right hand counter.
Yep.
Just dropped him with a super quick straight right, and I can see that landing 6 different ways. Especially after the first 3 minutes of fighting Alex Garcia. So
yeah, and the way he throws those spinning kicks too, like that's the thing, is if Garcia is going to come out and wait for him, like those spinning kicks are deadly and fast and hard to predict. So it makes people desperate. Like you get to a point where you're like, I gotta pressure this guy. I can't just sit back and try and figure out what's coming at me. So
there's not always an easy explanation though, because I don't think Alex Garcia fits nicely into the how much did you prepare question, because he's a TriStar fighter. And
true.
I'm sure Firas Zahabi has them studying footage and specifically preparing things. It's just that like some fighters aren't perfect fits even for the most analytical of camps.
And Garcia has never really TriStar style.
Yeah, that's fair. But I don't think Garcia's style really blends with the TriStar style.
Which has always been kind of a problem for Alex Garcia.
Yeah. He's sort of caught between two worlds. The world of the wild left hook swinging maniacs who live among the trees and just run out to knock people out and never spend more than 3 minutes fighting them. And that's all their life is. And the Firas Zahabi world where like fighting is a thing which you prepare to do by studying over a desk by candlelight.
Yeah.
2 very different worlds.
Yeah. All right. Odds on that bout. Salikhov is a reasonable favorite, opening at -180 and slowly falling to -218. Garcia, the underdog, opening at +140 and rising steadily to +176. I'm reasonably comfortable with those odds. I don't think they should get way higher. Salikhov's record of first round only KOs does not necessarily, you know, it means that if this fight goes more than a round, it could get really weird. Mm-hmm. But I do think that Garcia should be an underdog just with the way things set up. All right. That brings us to a featherweight bout, Wang Guan versus Alex Caceres. And there's like a 60% chance that Alex Caceres gets himself knocked out by Wang Guan.
Yeah.
This is like the thing with Alex. This is the how much do you prepare fight on this card.
Yeah.
Because Wang Guan is not good off his back at all. And his wrestling is really like single level. He is the prototypical single level of takedown defense. Like I sprawled. Did that sprawl work? great. Oh, did you change an angle slightly? I guess I'm falling down now. Like, that is his takedown defense.
He sprawls like a drawbridge.
Yeah.
He can't change angles. He can just fall on you as you try to hit his hips.
Yeah. And, you know, I watched his fight with, Shane Young, and that was enough. In the ring, against somebody who doesn't have a very good wrestling game, just being able to sprawl him out and be physical was enough to win. Because he's a very, very well-schooled power striker, you know? It's basically a left body kick and a power right hand, but it's really, you know, with the occasional right high kick and really occasional jab in there. But it's a very well-schooled, well-structured version of that, you know? He sets those punches and kicks up really well, knows exactly how to do it. And Alex Garcia has become a much better boxer, or Alex Caceres, rather, has become a much better boxer over the years. Much slicker, much trickier, much craftier fighter. Better at slipping punches, better footwork, better body and head movement. No power.
And still Alex Caceres.
Yeah. And prone to prolonged lapses of technique.
Yeah.
And not a terrible chin, but not the best chin in the world. Somebody who can still get hurt in a lot of fights. And he doesn't like to wrestle at all. And the better and slicker he's gotten as a striker, the less he likes to wrestle. Because he's got a good body lock slam game. He can go out and take Wang Guan down and beat him up.
As soon as he felt like taking Cole Miller down, for example, he did it with ease. And with very pretty high amplitude body locked slams as well.
Yep. He can absolutely do that here. There is zero question that he could take Wang Guan down and finish him in, like, inside a round. Submit him, TKO him, whatever. If he just has a 3-round kickboxing match, I mean, Guan's chin isn't perfect. Actually, tell a lie. I was thinking of a different fighter. I was thinking of, because all these Chinese, like, all these guys, I think Yadong Song, all these guys, they all have this really similar, like, right hand centric striking style.
The Sanda style, I guess.
Yeah. But I'm gonna pick Wang Guan. Like, Caceres, I don't trust him to not just go out and kickbox for 3 rounds and eat a huge power shot that he shouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I see it. I see it. Alex Caceres he's one of my favorite fighters to watch. I always enjoy his fights. They're weird. They're fun. He's an interesting person. But he is one of my least favorite fighters to make predictions for, because what the hell's going to happen in any of his fights? He's a good fighter. He can fight at a high level. And even in fights where he loses, he tends to compete with significantly more highly touted opponents. But he has some sort of that Will Brooks gene in him, where he's just making strange decisions in the midst of his fights, where sometimes he just seems to sort of zone out and not really be paying attention to what he's doing. Other times he is, like, beautifully sharp and crisp and can just pick somebody apart.
He got his ass beat in the 3rd round of that Cole Miller fight.
Yeah.
And he was ruling every second of that fight for 2 rounds, and then just got beat on.
He thrashed Cole Miller for 10 minutes and then, like, got his back taken and got hit a bunch. And, like, what happened? There was no clear swing point where it was like, oh, Caceres is getting tired now. Oh, Caceres was rocked by that shot. It was like he just sort of fell apart, which he does. Yeah, I guess I'll side with you. Like, I think that's maybe enough to pick Guan Wang over him.
So the other part of this, too, is you have to remember then how out of sorts traveling to Japan, and I realize China, not Japan, but still, I mean, traveling west for an overseas fight Caceres looked against Masanori Kanehara. Like, he just looked dead in that fight.
He was awful in that fight. Yeah,
And he wasn't ill. Like, he was out hiking the next day, and he was like, you know, there was no like, oh, I was sick or whatever. He just was totally flat.
He did travel to fight D. Where was that fight card?
Was
that in Australia or?
That was in Singapore. So that's fair. Yeah.
He traveled far overseas to fight D and looked very sharp.
Yeah, that's true. He also eye poked him really early in that fight. And
yeah. Boy, I'm just gonna take the crazy option and go with Wang. That sounds
fine.
That sounds fine. He's just gonna catch him on the chin with a right hand.
Yep.
And like even if Caceres wins, that's gonna happen a few times.
Yeah.
But if it happens early enough and at the right moment that Caceres is like just ready to go off to pasture and not pay attention for the next 10 minutes, then that first right hand could lead to an avalanche effect. It could be Guan Wang just sort of pulls out the seams of Alex Caceres' already very threadbare style of fighting.
Yep, I agree.
Am I getting louder or something?
I turned you up a little because people are complaining that your mic is not working. You're fine though. I've already turned you up, so don't like monkey with it more. Or do, and I'll turn you down. But I don't know. Anyway, after that, let's see. Odds on that fight. Alex Caceres is the slight favorite, opening at -195 and climbing consistently up to now -146. Wang Guan open at +155 and falling steadily to +122. Definitely think the closer to even that gets, the more right it is, just because you cannot trust Caceres to fight a winning fight. And
it's always fun when he does, though.
Yeah, it's fun when he does, but like the good thing is if he goes out, because I think his footwork is slicker, his variety is slicker, he can go out there and be more technical than Wang for 5 minutes, but he doesn't land with nearly the power at all. And so at some point he's just playing with fire, and he's gonna like feel comfortable and confident and doing his thing, and then just get drilled. All right, that brings us to our co-main event: Li Jingliang, Zak Ottow. And let's see. This is me. I mean, I'm picking Li Jingliang. There's no way I'm not. The question
fight ever for me.
What?
I'll always pick Li Jingliang.
Yeah, always. And it's just kind of like Ottow is a weird fighter, and this could be a weird fight because Ottow is he's powerful and he's fast. Like he reminds me a bit of Alex Garcia, frankly. Like his striking game isn't deep, but he hits hard and he's fast-handed. And then the big thing for him is that he's just super defensive. And it's defensive to the point that he can just give away fights because he doesn't work that hard. And unfortunately for him, like as a guy who is powerful, he can wrestle offensively a bit and grapple offensively a bit. He's got a lot of trouble holding good grappling positions for a guy with as many submissions as he has. If you actually go back and watch a lot of those fights, a lot of times he like loses the first position, or he'll get on somebody's back and he'll have a rear naked choke, and then he'll just get reversed in guard.
Yeah.
And be on the bottom. So he's got problems holding good grappling positions on the ground, and then he's got a real problem defending single legs. There have now been several fights where he'll get picked with a high single, and then have his post leg cut out and end up on his back. And that's very much something that Li Jingliang could do to him. The other thing really is that Li Jingliang will probably eat a couple of big power shots early in this fight and get hurt from it, because always does. Ottow has fast hands, plays a defensive game, and Li Jingliang comes out throwing a lot of strikes and just trying to test and figure out his opponent's offense early and eat strikes doing it. Like, that's just the way he fights. But Ottow doesn't follow up on anything well enough to knock people out. Like, for a guy who has heavy hands, he's one of those dudes who never flips a switch, is always at this low-paced, sort of consistent, oh, I landed a sharp right hand and that wobbled you. I guess I better take 3 steps back and put up my hands and, like, wait and see what happens now.
Yeah.
And that should be exactly the kind of thing to let Li Jingliang get all of his reads and start to take over the fight in the 2nd and 3rd rounds. So, Li Jingliang by decision.
Yeah, but for that weird, well, not weird. I mean, that's kind of what he does. But for that 3rd round finish, the 3rd round submission loss to was it Keitaro? Yeah, Keita Nakamura. Yeah. But for that, Li Jingliang is pretty much set in stone as a fighter who gets better as the fight goes on. As you said, he tends to come out pushing the pace he likes to push early, and almost always gets tagged cleanly with a few hard power shots, a few hard counters early in the fight. Sometimes even in the mold of Ioane and Jacek, it's just like an early jab that sits him down in his butt, because he just seems to get hit and seems to need to warm up a bit before he can actually absorb those punches and also defend them and not have to take them. But in rounds 2 and 3, even when the first round has not gone his way at all, Li Jingliang seems remarkably more comfortable defending takedowns, slipping his head out of the way of strikes, and then you get to see what he does well, which is throw really, really pretty boxing combinations, work off of a very solid jab, and land lots of thudding low kicks. He's got a very meat and potatoes boxing game plus low kicks, and I think that's going to work based on pace for more or less the same reasons you said. Like, Ottow just does not wait and see is very much the right way to describe Ottow's style in the ring. And Li Jingliang is not a wait and see fighter. He's pretty much the exact opposite. He's a go and find out fighter. And I think that's going to be enough. I think he's going to catch Ottow with combinations as the fight goes on. I think Ottow is probably going to wrestle him with some success in the early round. But after that, as soon as Ottow cannot hit easy takedowns, it's going to be Li Jingliang's fight.
Yeah. The other thing, too, with that is that Li Jingliang, like, he even no matter how badly he's been hurt after the first round, he always looks really, really happy that round is over. Like, he's always just like, yeah, all right, round 2 now. Like, in that Frank Camacho fight, like, he was getting nailed and just, like, brutalized for 5 minutes. And he comes out and he's all, like, clapping his hands and, like, pumped up. And then he comes out and he wins the rest of the fight. So it feels... And Ottow is absolutely the dude that will let you take all the time and space you need to figure out a game.
Exactly. Zak Ottow is a fighter who also, I think, sort of expects his opponents to give him some leeway at times, because he does it for them. And Li Jingliang will take advantage of that time given to him, but he's not going to let Ottow have the same luxury.
Absolutely. Odds on that fight... Li Jingliang is a slight favorite, reasonable favorite, not slight, I should say reasonable favorite. Opened at -170, has steadily dropped now to -193. Zak Ottow opening at +130, steadily rising to +159. I think that could honestly be a little bit longer. Ottow is not a finisher. Li Jingliang tends to take over fights as they go on. It seems like Ottow doesn't, other than catching Li Jingliang and, like, knocking him out, doesn't seem like he has the game to win this, but they are getting longer. So, people are seeing that. And that brings us to our main event now. Kelvin Gastelum, Michael Bisping.
So glad that Michael Bisping is taking a long flight only 3 weeks after that fight with George St. Pierre. I'm so happy that that's happening. Especially because I'm very confident he can see out of both of his eyes. I mean, what is this, Zane? What's the idea here? What's the thought process behind this?
Michael Bisping was ready to fight. He likes to fight. I mean, people gave him a ton of shit for his title reign for only targeting big money fights that would get him paid and not top contenders. But the thing you got to realize and see out there, which is clear from this and clear from the rest of his career, is that Michael Bisping really clearly takes whatever fight the UFC offers him whenever they offer it to him, and will ask for really difficult fights as well. Part of his title reign was the UFC was like, holy shit, Michael Bisping's champion? We should make some money off this.
Sure.
Like, we can put Dan Henderson in the fight. People want to see Dan Henderson fight Michael Bisping? Let's do that. You know, George St. Pierre, let's do George St. Pierre. Like, it's not like the UFC wasn't like, oh yeah, we don't really want to make George St. Pierre versus Michael Bisping, but I guess if we have to,
Oh,
you
no,
know.
it was definitely their idea.
It was so Michael Bisping, he turns right around and he's going to like fight Kelvin Gastelum on short notice because he's ready to fight and he wants to fight and he thinks he can win. And he even said like he's just mad about losing his title and he wants to
respect
win.
the candor of Mike Bisping, and he's like, yeah, mostly it's because I'm pissed off at how badly I felt I did.
Yeah.
And so I want another fight right away, which is like not a good idea. Not smart decision making, but you got to respect it. And it's just as a fan, I don't want to. I like Michael Bisping. I don't really want to see his downfall like I have to see every other favorite fighter's downfall. But it seems like we're gonna have no choice. We're gonna have to watch the last few years of Michael Bisping's career as he just struggles to let go of being an elite professional fighter.
Well, he's dead set on retiring in March in London.
We'll see. I don't ever take any of that seriously until it.
I know.
Especially with someone like Bisping, who, as you said, like, will take any fight the UFC offers him. If Conor McGregor, starts his own rival promotion and the UFC desperately needs a fight with name fighters in it in 2 years' time,
True.
Bisping will be in a main event.
True.
He'll happily do it as a 42-year-old man or whatever he is by then. He's got an interesting style for Kelvin Gastelum, right? Michael Bisping he's not like he's completely out of this fight. I'm not down on him being in this fight because he has no shot here. He throws a good amount of volume. He moves a lot. And he's very difficult to take down. He's going to force Kelvin Gastelum into a kickboxing match with him. That's the best that Mike can hope for. And he is going to try to work with lots of jabs and lots of low kicks and probably try to counter Gastelum. I think his real shot in this fight is to sort of do to Gastelum what he did to Luke Rockhold, which should be a little easier against a fighter who is literally half Luke Rockhold's size.
Mm-hmm.
He has a chance there because Gastelum tends to come in with his head straight up and his chin high. He's very, very confident, leaping across space to find his mark, and that means he's vulnerable. Rick Story caught him like that. He's been caught like that in a few fights.
Vitor Belfort lit him up for half a round doing that, and Chris Weidman was landing with some success, but not much.
Yeah,
Tim Kennedy landed.
Tim Kennedy did, yeah. Yeah, everyone seems to catch Gastelum on the way in, and he just sort of overwhelms them. But that's the problem. The other main difference between Gastelum and Rockhold, other than the obvious physical one, is that Kelvin Gastelum has a really good chin.
Yep.
And Luke Rockhold doesn't. And Michael Bisping is not really known for knocking out anyone other than Luke Rockhold. Even as his technique has gotten better.
His power's gotten, he plants better, he throws more power.
Yeah, even though all that has improved, he is still not a power puncher. And Kelvin Gastelum has a lot of snap and force to his shots. He's got very quick hands, and he can push a pace that is sort of similar to the pace that Michael Bisping used to push, but I'm not sure he can push quite anymore. So I'm taking Kelvin Gastelum by, I'm going to say, an early second round TKO. Yeah,
that feels very right. Yeah, I mean, the big things here are, seeing Michael Bisping get, dropped by GSP, you want to talk about dudes who don't hit that hard.
Yeah.
And the thing with Bisping is that in any of these fights, that Rockhold one being the weird exception because it was just this quick KO, but I mean, even early in that fight, Michael Bisping got hit. It's not like Luke Rockhold didn't land anything on Michael Bisping. But in all of these fights, against anyone who can throw well consistently at him, Michael Bisping will get hit hard and hurt.
Yep.
He just will. It will happen. And he's been fighting a lot of old dudes lately who can't follow up on hurting someone the way they used to. You know, Dan Henderson hurt him early and then tried to land a bunch of follow-up shots, but couldn't put him away, and was a much more gassed out fighter the rest of the fight, who still hurt him again, at least a couple more times.
Despite all of Bisping's obvious improvements, had Dan Henderson been the same Dan Henderson he fought at UFC 100, he still would have knocked Michael Bisping out.
Yep.
So
Anderson Silva, you know, does no longer commits to strikes nearly the way he used to. No longer, you know, all those feints and all the movement is now a disguise for the fact that he's not sitting down on punches the way he used to anymore. Still, people can still argue he technically knocked Michael Bisping out with a flying knee. And then GSP comes out and, you know, in a kickboxing match that Bisping was turning and winning, drops him with a left hook. And there's just, especially against left hands for a southpaw fighter who only throws power lefts and steps in with them like explosively over space, it is just set up for Michael Bisping to be busy and doing stuff and then just get dropped so hard.
Yeah, and especially if he's having vision problems, that little flashing jab that Gastelum throws just kind of blinds people and measures them up for the left hand is going to be horrible news for one-eyed Michael Bisping.
So I gotta agree with you. Might even be a first-round KO.
Woo! So, that's how we want to end this card.
Yeah.
Woo! Why couldn't they just, you know, bite the bullet and make Li Jingliang the main event? Come on. Do the right thing, UFC. That's what we really want to see. All the fans in the world can agree with me. Everyone but me. Everyone, including me, cares a lot about Li Jingliang.
That's right. All right. Odds on this card, or odds on this fight. Michael Bisping is the underdog, opening at plus 120, rising steadily to plus 230. Gastelum opening at minus 161, dropping steadily to minus 285. That feels pretty right for me. Bisping is not likely. He's likely to hit Gastelum several times, maybe even wobble him a little, but he's unlikely to hurt Gastelum badly enough to finish him. And then if it's a kickboxing match for 5 rounds, like, he's just going to get hit at some point and hit hard.
Yeah, that's going to happen.
Gastelum's too fast.
If old GSP can do it,
yep,
Kelvin Gastelum absolutely can do it.
GSP, like, with blocks of cement tied to, like, each limb, he was moving in slow motion in that fight.
Yeah, also, well after GSP had clearly started to slow down.
Yeah.
Another worrying thing about that fight, I knew, all of us, I think, who know these guys well, know their styles, saw that, like, second round, third round, and we're like, okay, this is where Bisping starts to win. And Bisping couldn't pull away with it.
No.
Like, he kind of let GSP off the hook because maybe he didn't feel he could push the same pace he used to. And when Michael Bisping loses that, he's kind of lost it all. That's really his secret weapon.
Yeah. So, kind of an easy pick for Gastelum at the top of this.
Yeah.
Still, though, if you don't like Michael Bisping, watching him get KO'd will be a cherry on top of a card that will largely be fun, crazy, like, bad action fights.
It's going to be like a solid Bellator prelim card throughout lots of it, but it'll probably be entertaining.
It'll be the UFC Human Sacrifice Hour at Fight Pass pacing. So, a good thing to wake up to first thing in the morning with a cup of coffee.
Joe Rogan versus the volcano.
All right. No, we're done now. That's it. You can find me on Twitter at TheZaneTime. You can find Connor on Twitter at BoxingBush, BUSCH. You can find both of us over at BloodyElbow.com. And if you're watching this on YouTube, give it a like, the thumbs up down there. That helps us a ton. Our YouTube channel, MMANation.com, DOTCOM. Subscribe to it. That's where you get all the latest Bloody Elbow shows, videos, news, analysis, all the stuff we do week in, week out. We will be back next week for the Tough 26 finale featuring Nico Montano and either Roxanne Modafferi and Sahara Eubanks. The UFC crowns their flyweight division. And you know, should be. If you like women's MMA, it should be a fun card. It'll probably be reasonably solid. It's got some fun action fights and whatever. We'll watch it, break it down, all that good stuff. So we'll have the Care Don't Care If I Did It, MMA Vivisection, Knuckle Up, Heavy Hands, all that good stuff again for you next week. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.